You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, your source of music news, stories, and 2-hour deep dive interviews with bands that have sold over 150 million albums. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the lead guitarist for the multi-platinum selling and 2-time Juno award-winning band Simple Plan. They've released over 20 singles and have sold a staggering 10 million albums. So welcome to the podcast, Jeff Stinco. Jeff, how are you? And is it true that you and your son lock arms to make a mean pasta?
Dude, it's such a pleasure finally meeting you officially. And yeah, man, you're well informed. My son and I are actually we're trying to live up to the legend of my grandmother, who is known to have had like over 365 recipes of pasta. So, the whole story was my grandpa was like, let's make pasta tonight. The next day she would ask him like, what do you want to eat? I want to eat pasta. And she basically had like a different version every day. So my son and I are pursuing that love for pasta. And dude, him and I, like it's such a great bonding thing. Him and I, when I'm not on tour, we cook together and it's fun. We catch up. We talk about our days. We talk about his issues, with being a teenager and my issues with being a parent, and we make it work over pasta.
So is it possible that in the future there's like a family cookbook or a TV show or something?
Dude, it's funny that you mentioned it because I participated, to a few TV shows where, I showed some recipes of mine and I even like shared some of the recipes, for charity and stuff like that. But I've been pushing my son. I'm like, dude, you're always on Facebook, you're always on Instagram, like we should do something. And he's like, Dad, that's your thing. So I'm still working on that. I'm negotiating right now.
So when I put out the bat signal saying that you were coming on the podcast, man, the fans came out of the woodworks worldwide.
That's cool.
And they provided questions for this interview. I wanted to make sure that the diehard Simple Plan fans had a chance to participate as well. So I'm going to sprinkle in some fan questions as we go. And the first one has to do with food. So this is Eldaremo83 from Facebook. Question is, we know Jeff does a lot of family cooking in his off time, but what is his go-to signature dish?
I do a mean barbecue. It's funny, like we're touring so much in the US right now that I'm getting inspired by New Orleans cooking, by, Texas barbecue. And I try to bring that back home because it's kind of like exotic for us, all those, sauces and stuff and hot sauces. And I actually make my own too. I mean, for me, cooking is really important. And now is tomato season, so we're gonna can tomatoes for the whole winter. We're gonna make, like we're gonna prepare like basically food, for the whole year. And to me, it's about bringing families together. It's about my friends coming in. And it's funny, everybody when I call out and I'm asking my friends, do you want to help out for tomatoes? They're like, nah, that's your thing. And at the end of the day, comes 4 o'clock and all my friends are there drinking wine and sort of helping out, through the thing. So for me, it's like it's a hobby. It's something that I love. I love cooking. I owned restaurants at a certain period in my life. The band took too much space, that it was just not possible to pursue that anymore. But I loved it. It was wonderful. I love hosting. I love having people over. For me, cooking is like putting out a show. It's like another show. It's like there's the ceremony, there's the getting together, the music has to be right, the wine pairing, everything. So I love it.
That's awesome. So we're going to cover as much as we can of your life, your career, your discography over the next 30 minutes. There's a lot to get to. Let's get started all the way back at the beginning. Where did this love of music come from? Is there an earliest musical memory that stands out to you?
I mean, when I was really, really young, I don't know, I was fascinated by music because we had like, there was much music, but we had Musique Plus, which was like the French equivalent of Much Music. and they would play videos, and I was just like, I just didn't understand. It was so magical for me I had no idea how they put all these sounds together, and I was pretty amazed. But what really, really did it for me is I had like older kids in my neighborhood who would wear like, like Aussie t-shirts, Metallica t-shirts, even like Depeche Mode t-shirts. That Depeche Mode, a Violator t-shirt was just like the coolest thing I had ever seen in my life. But one of the teenagers who lived next door actually played guitar pretty well. And at some point, he's playing this cool riff, and I just didn't really understand because I had heard the Beatles, like parents around would play acoustic guitars and play Beatles songs. I thought that was cool, but what he was playing was way cooler. And then he's like, do you want to hear the original band? I'm like, absolutely. And he pulls out like a vinyl. So, like, even just there, it was so sick. Guys, long haired, wearing leather jackets. I thought it was, and cowboy hats, and I thought it would be a country record. He puts it on, and it's like the heaviest music you could ever hear. It was one from Metallica. And then I was like, okay, Mom, I want a guitar. And that's how it started, and then I got into grunge, I got into punk rock a bit later down the road. Like basically I had played with Pierre and Chuck, our singer and our drummer, in various incarnations of like grungy bands. And at some point, my dad was like, "Dude, you got to learn music properly." So he sent me to music school, and the guys kept on going and had a punk band. So Chuck would always feed me new records, and so I was doing the classical thing, but at the same time, I was keeping sort of like an ear to on the ground to actually like just check out what was going on with sort of that world as well.
So we have a couple fan questions about your early life. So this is from Janine Tepsa and Brooke Radergal Wemmis. The questions are, what inspired you to learn to play the guitar, which you kind of just answered, and which musicians were your biggest influences when you first started?
So, and I was really young when I got that record. Like, so basically, I was exposed to, to a lot of 80s rock, very early on because the guys I was hanging out with, in my neighborhood were older. So they were listening to Ozzy, they were listening to King Diamond, Dokken, and I was really into horror movies. And back then, all the horror flicks had like metal music in it, glam metal, whatever you want to call it. And that was very guitar driven. So that was very inspiring for me. But the first real record that I destroyed was a Def Leppard record. It was Hysteria. But I was young. I'm talking about like 10, 11. And I had like my Discman, and it was probably a cassette tape actually. And I was listening to it nonstop, like on repeat. And I just loved it. It was just like my little universe. I knew that record like inside out. And I actually learned how to play that record like throughout the whole thing. And there was a guitar player in that band, Steve Clark, who unfortunately passed away. But he had like the coolest look, low hanging, white guitar, and that was always sort of like, okay, that's the look right there. And eventually, I just wanted to, and Nirvana came. Nirvana changed everything for me. It was just like that had like a punk attitude. It was just like angry. The songs were amazing. It was sort of a mix of Beatle-esque melodies and really angry attitude. And that really, really, really spoke to me.
So I actually saw Def Leppard a few weeks ago. They were headlining Blues Fest in Ottawa. So I saw them for the first time. They totally
How was
crushed
it?
it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
They were so good. And yeah, they've had a couple diamond selling albums, including Hysteria. But man, when Pour Some Sugar on Me comes on, that is such an undeniable hit.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, like it really spoke to my imagination. Like, first of all, you also have to understand that I spoke French. It was my first language. So I didn't really understand what they were talking about, and I kind of learned how to speak English listening to them, listening to AC/DC. So you could imagine that my vocabulary was pretty sexual at
Yeah.
first. No, but I mean, yeah, it was just like I thought it was the coolest thing ever, like all the sounds, everything, which kind of led me to get really heavily into production as well, and sort of understand, how they got all the harmonies going, I really dug pretty deep. Mutt Lang was definitely a very, very big influence for me because he was the guy who did all those Bryan Adams, AC/DC records. I had no clue, but I was really gravitating towards all these records that he was making. And he was the glue. He was, the DNA that actually spoke to me through all these different bands.
And he would go on to do the Shania album, so it didn't
Those
matter
are
which
great.
genre. He
Yeah.
just great producer, had an ear for the hits.
For sure, definitely. And the harmonies, which is something that's really important in Simple Plan, and Pierre and I bonded very early on over that, over like really dense harmonies. Because in Simple Plan, even on the first record, and more so on the later records, but we would stack a lot of vocals, and it is still something that's part of the sound, and it's important to us, and on the first record, it was like, let's just Mutt Lang the hell out of this record. That was definitely the concept.
So let's dive into Simple Plan. So you meet the other members in high school, you start the band in 1999. The first song you write is "I'd Do Anything," which a few years later would go on to be a big hit. It's pretty impressive that right off the bat, you guys were hit songwriters. You just didn't know it yet.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that it actually went that way. It's interesting you say it this way. So that I do anything riff. So basically, I went to Chuck. So Chuck and Pierre had a band called Reset. Reset was like the reset of the band we were in. So when I left, to go to music school, my dad was adamant. He was like, "You are not playing in a band unless you know what you're doing." Like first immigrant kind of mentality. He just wanted me to just do better than him, and have a better life. The intention was right. I don't know if it was the right way to approach it. Either way. So I'm in music school. They reset the band, and they go on to become a pretty famous sort of like local phenomenon, with that band Reset. And then they fight. They split up. I call Chuck, and we start this band, and we audition like so many singers, and then Chuck's like, just let's write a record. And I'm like, oh, I could write a pop punk record in a week. And I started just writing a lot of riffs, but I understood right away that getting those great melodies, those good vocal hooks was a lot harder than I initially thought. So I wrote a verse. I wrote the riff. I was really young when I wrote the first early sort of ideas that became I Do Anything. I was probably 16 or 17, and and Pierre basically brought it together. Pierre has a beautiful ear for melody. He's got a very strong sensibility for hooks, and and it's funny. He went driving. He drove trucks for his dad, and he says that he would play the demo that I had recorded over and over and over until he just stumbled on that melody and that hook. And that's what became I'd Do Anything. But the story is way more complex afterwards. So we had I'd Do Anything, but getting those other songs was a lot of work. And the Real Magic song is perfect on that record. Like that song consolidated everything. But that was the last song that we recorded, that we wrote, and it almost did not make the record because it was sort of an anomaly for us. It was just too power ballady. It was just not cool really to sort of have a song like that. And what really, really sort of did it for us is it's when we had the idea of playing the chorus softer than the verse in the intro. And I'm seeing that Our Lady Peace poster behind you. And yeah, exactly. They are the band that inspired that arrangement. They had a song that did exactly that, and we were like, well, maybe that's the solution. Let's try it out. And it just sort of like made the song. And as soon as we arranged it that way, we were like, okay, that's cool. We're onto something. But actually did not know that it would have such a reach. We had no idea that people would actually make it their own and actually really embrace that those lyrics. It took a while, and that song was not chosen by the label, was not chosen by us. the fans chose that song as the next single. And so we did all right with I Do Anything, did great with, Addicted. We did okay with I'm Just a Kid, not that great, but Perfect was the song that basically propelled the band onto the other level.
And I guess with a debut album, you can't lead with the song Perfect. Even if you think that would be the biggest single, you have to first present the band with the image. Perfect isn't the actual sound of the band, it's kind of one of the sounds. So you want to come out of the gate swinging with a song that sounds like the general sound of the band. So is that one of the reasons why it was the fourth and final single and not the first single?
So this whole period is interesting because so we are touring nonstop, like we just never stop. But our records are not doing really good. I Do Anything, and actually, you know what? I'm Just a Kid came out and really was sort of a local hit in Montreal. But aside from that, it was a flop. Like it really did not do all that well. And we wanted to release I Do Anything as the first single, but the label got us, a placement in that movie, The New Guy, and the movie paid for the video, so the label was like, sure, free video, let's do it. So I'm just a kid became the first single, and it's funny because now it's probably the most known song of the band. Fast forward years later, you got the TikTok challenge, and it brings it into another sort of level. But so back then it flops, but the label keeps, it just keeps on sort of believing in the band because we are touring so much that we are slowly building things, like we're going to Buffalo over and over again. We're doing New York, we're doing Philly, we're playing all these Warp Tours, we're playing all these, shows opening in the parking lot for Blink-182 and Green Day. And it starts to build something. And eventually, like, there was this show called Oven Fresh on MTV, and it would play like it was one of those like battle of the bands kind of thing. You would have one song against another. So it was Simple Plan against Lit, Simple Plan against whatever band was popular. And since we had been touring so much, our fan base was like calling nonstop, and and just requesting the song. So we managed to actually win a lot of those battles, and which brought us to be played, in better slots during the day, which led us to TRL. So unlike a lot of bands, who start on the radio, we started on MTV. It was the first thing that actually sort of like, exposed us. And to actually answer your question about Perfect, we did not want to release that song as a single. You're absolutely right. We didn't feel that it was energetic enough. We didn't feel that it was showcasing the band so in an honest light. We thought it was just like, oh, it's a cool song on the record, but that's it. But we were communicating with fans, over what was it back then? I'm trying to think. Well, we had our email addresses on our websites, and people would write us on them. But even like
Like MySpace or one of
yeah, it
those?
was MySpace forums, and we would read, about Perfect nonstop. People would tell us, that's what I want to tell my parents. That's what I want to tell my dad. I feel that you're saying exactly what I don't have the right words to tell my dad. So that song became really, really a fan favorite really quickly, and we just decided let's do something about it. And man, did it ever blow up? I remember like I was walking to a video store. Back then, you would rent, videotapes to watch movies, right? And I love doing that. And basically, like my manager calls me on my cell phone, that big thing, and he's like, "Dude, you know how many records we're selling this week?" I'm like, "I don't know, a couple hundreds." He's like, "What about 69,000?" And it was just like nonstop, nonstop. And yeah, it became like a really big thing, but really quickly. But we were still living in our apartments, crappy apartments. We were just sort of like, touring nonstop, trying to keep our lives together. It was an interesting time.
So that debut album, you spent over a year in the studio with producer Arnold Lanny.
Yeah.
And Man, I wanted to kick off this interview powerfully, so I reached out to the man himself, and I have some kind words sent in from Arnold Lanny. And you mentioned he recorded this diamond-selling album, Clumsy, for Our Lady Peace, as well as albums for Finger 11. This is what Arnold had to say. He said, "I've been making music for the past 50 years, and in all that time, I don't know if I've ever met a band that worked as hard as Simple Plan. They were relentless in their pursuit of success. Their drive and desire to achieve what they had set out to do was inspiring. That spirit, that pursuit of excellence was especially evident in Jeff. During the making of the first record, I remember Jeff always tucked away in some corner of the studio, guitar in hand, meticulously practicing scales, chords, licks, and riffs. He would run up and down the neck, locked in with a metronome, jamming for hours on end. I admired and respected Jeff so much for that. I loved that he wanted to be great and that he worked tirelessly and happily at being the best that he could be. Jeff was and still is a musician's musician, a consummate professional. I'm proud of the music we made together, and I feel blessed to have worked with Jeff and the guys. Even more rewarding is knowing that all these years later, the music we made back then has stood the test of time. It's incredible to see that it's still resonating with millions of fans around the world today." So that's from Arnold Lanny.
Holy shit, I'm really touched. I mean, wow, brings tears, man. I respect Arnold very much, like I always did. Like he had made records that I loved, like Happiness, Clumsy, records. The reason we worked with that team, our manager Eric Lawrence, and we worked with Arnold was because of those OLP records, and and Arnold was tough on us. Man, was he tough. He would all often talk about that McEnroe thing where he said, you guys just don't understand. Like I'm serving you and you can't, send the ball back yet. You guys just are not at that level yet. It's like, and we were like so pissed off at him for saying that, but he was right. We had a lot to learn. We we must have re-recorded that record like 20 times over and over. But Arnold was like, man, like relentless pursuing that perfect harmony, the melody. He taught me how to write hooks on guitar. Like I had no idea. I could play like I was just out of music school. I had won contests, playing classical guitar. I was fast. I was loud. I knew how to play. I could play like probably better than I play now. I was really in good shape, but I hadn't understood the art form of writing hooks that are basically serving the song. And Arnold taught me that. Arnold taught me like whenever Pierre's not singing, you go in and you add a hook. You make sure that you paint a picture so people like really recognize the song just from your guitars. And it's funny because then that brings me back to Def Leppard. Back then, that's what I loved about it. I love that every single little riff, you hear like the guitar, like for Pour Some Sugar on Me, like you hear the two first notes and all those DC records, it's the same thing. So Arnold was like, that is what you're doing. But now you need to listen to Joe Jackson. You need to listen to the Cars. And man, it blew my mind. Like all that stuff I hadn't heard, Arnold exposed me to. And dude, like he was tough on Pierre too, like just harmonies and personality. Do I think that Pierre's vocal performances back then are the best? I don't, I think that little like sort of like snotty sound that he has uh, is not a great representation of what he can do as a lead singer, but it sure has personality. And I think that people love that. And Arnold was just, yeah, like a lot of the stuff that we still do today, we owe to Arnold. As far as, stacking harmonies, making sure that personality is there, all the hooks. Arnold would say, never thread water. So, like, if you had a bridge, like we had those long extended bridge that really didn't do much for the song, but we loved them. Arnold was like, nope, chop. Let's make sure that there's something going on there. And to this day, we still, we use Arnold's terms, pushes and threading water, and this is not hooky enough. Those are all like Arnold stuff. So I'm really touched by what he said. I respect him so much. I think we made some really good music together, and hopefully we will meet up again at some point. That's something I really hopes, will happen.
So I'm just a kid comes out when I'm 17. That's how I discover the band. I become a fan. I pick up the debut album. I pick up a bunch of the albums after that. I liked you guys so much that I went out to see you guys in concert. So in 2002, I saw you at the Civic Center in Ottawa at the X opening for Biff Naked. And this was a special show for you specifically because the concert was on August 22nd. Is there anything special about August 22nd?
On my birthday. I did not remember that. I remember the show though. I remember Biff for sure. She was so amazing. She had like crazy musicians playing for her. Like her band was insane. Um, yeah, I mean, those were really the early days. You said 2002?
2002, August 22nd, opening for Biff Naked. And I remember Pierre on the mic says, "Hey, it's somebody's birthday over here." So everyone wishes you a happy birthday, the band and the crowd. And then Chuck comes around the kit and he pours water on your head, like just to put you in the spotlight. So I remember that moment. And today's August 19th, which means you have a birthday coming up. So happy birthday in advance. I think there's
Thank
just what,
you.
3 days to go?
Thank you. I already got my first birthday gift. Sebastian gave me some very fancy coffee already. So, you know, I'm grateful to be in a band with, my best friends, and it's and 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 I will say it very honestly, they're my best friends, but sometimes I wanna kick their asses too, like it's one of those brotherly love-hate things. I love them very much, but they're hard to deal with. You're talking about Chuck pouring water on my head during a show. It's the kind of stuff, that little like bullying, teenagery thing, that's still going to this day. And man, I'm like, dudes, I don't want to do this anymore, but it hasn't changed. There's part of our dynamic that still remains, but my bandmates are great guys. They've always supported me, through the highs and lows because we've been doing this for over 25 years. So, a big chunk of my adult life was spent being on the road, being on stages, touring with those guys, So you can only keep doing that if you're with good people that you respect. And yeah, I'm grateful for that.
So then in 2004, you guys release your follow-up album, Still Not Getting Any. This goes platinum in the US, triple platinum in Australia, 4 times platinum in Canada. The first two albums were so massive. Almost no human being will ever experience that level of success. Can you try to put into words what your life was like during that period of success with those two albums?
My life was a mess, it was just like a big tornado. It was just like so overwhelming. Like we would walk in Times Square in New York and people would stop us and people would know exactly who we were. Then we would go back to Montreal and we couldn't get arrested if we tried because of the French
And
language.
we did try.
And we did try, did we ever? It was very interesting, that whole thing. So I would have a very sort of grounded life at home, and then I would live the craziest, stories ever. Private planes, playing two shows, one in Belgium, one in Toronto, getting back to Australia afterwards. It was just like all very fast. Sleeping, in airports, barely having any money to just even like buy clothing, or guitars or anything. Like it was just really, really crazy. It was funny being so famous and still be broke. That was an interesting thing. By the second record, things were better for sure. But during the whole first record, I really vividly remember having financial problems the whole time. And it really stressed me out. Like I was like, what am I going to do? And I think that is the reason why I always had a side hustle to the band. And because I was insecure about money until very much later in my life.
It's wild that the debut album sells like 4 million copies globally, but it takes time for the label to recoup. It takes time for the royalties to come in. It's pretty wild. 4 million, like almost no band sells 4 million and you're still having trouble with money.
Well, the truth is we were living a lifestyle that was just not the label was sort of pushing a lifestyle on us. We would go to fancy restaurants on recoupable money. We would go, but we that part was probably not the greatest, but what we actually did is we reinvested into the band. So they were lending us money to stay on the road. We would tour our asses off. We would do opening slots. Like we did the Avril Lavigne tour all around the world, and that was very expensive. We were not valuable enough for her to pay us, like a very big guarantee. So the label would support us, through this whole campaign. And but that costs money. So you're basically labels are big banks, that have marketing agencies, integrated. But back then they would lend you money with like crazy interest, and you had to pay it back, as you said, the recoupment system. And we just didn't make any money. It was just really, really hard. But I'm really proud that we did not have like crazy expenses. We would reinvest everything into the band. It was about touring, it was about merch, it was about videos. We spent a lot of money on videos that still look good today. Those videos are still fun. They're still, very well made, and that's I think a testimony of the hard work we put into making sure everything was the best it could be.
I think you made a smart investment reinvesting into the band, and there's no better investment than investing in yourself. So that's pretty awesome. We have a fan question from Amanda Avalar. She says, Simple Plan has helped a lot of kids get through the hard parts of life. I was one of them. And even as an adult, I have their music in a playlist called Therapy. What's the
Nice.
feeling what's the feeling you get knowing your band has brought light to so much darkness? And also, what's it like going from a fan base of mainly teenagers to adults who now have kids of their own?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like there's a bit of pressure that comes with, our fans telling us about, how much, we've helped them through certain things in their lives. Like we often get people like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Like I wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Perfect, if it wasn't for, this song saved my life, or your music in general. I'm always like, is that an exaggeration? Is that like, and then I'm sort of thinking like, as a teenager when I was listening to 10 by Pearl Jam, I remember like I was in a shitty phase of my life, and that record was like my shield. It was like my my therapy, So I kind of understand it. It puts a lot of pressure, but at the same time, I feel that my responsibility is be the best human possible. When I meet the fans, I make sure that I listen. I really actively listen. I don't know that I could really help. Like, I'm not a therapist by any means. I'm not, trained to help, but I'm a damn good listener. And that I've been training for my whole life. I got a great ear and I can listen. So I do that. And I just try to help with the band as much as possible. And I think it's funny now. I see the band as almost like sort of a big party. We get on stage and we allow people to forget about their problems for an hour and a half, 2 hours, have a great time, be surrounded by like-minded people, a community of music lovers, and that to me is pretty sick. That's pretty incredible. So that alone to me is, you know, well, that's my responsibility, making sure I kick ass. You were talking about how much I practice guitar. I still practice a lot. And it's not about, to me, it's about respect. I want our fans to get the best version of me. That's why I work out. That's why I eat properly. That's why I read. That's why, I practice guitar. I want to make sure I'm the best version of myself for my kids and for our fans as well.
When I was growing up, I played a lot of Guitar Hero, a lot of Rock Band. As a guitarist, I just had to ask you this question. So in 2020, Three Simple Plan songs end up in the video game Rock Band 4. So I have to ask you, as the lead guitarist, how much of an honor was it to have Rock Band bring in three of your guitar songs into the game that people could play?
It was pretty sick, especially like I was a bit frustrated too during that period because our genre was sort of like not seen as guitar music, you know? And I thought that I had crafted some pretty interesting parts, you know, and I had worked with Bob Rock, who taught me a lot, and I butted heads with Bob like quite a bit, you know. I was hard working with him. I was in a very sort of perfectionist part of my life. I wanted everything to be like, you know, perfect, perfect. And Bob was more about the attitude, the energy, and I learned a lot from him. But back then, we just didn't see, you know, eye to eye on things. So having, you know, our music finally recognized, you know, as good guitar music was something that was really important for me. It's not as important as it was, you know, anymore because I'm like more confident now with, you know, my abilities as a musician, not even as a guitar player, but really as a musician. You know, I hear things really well. I play what you know, I could play what I hear in my head, which is, you know, something that I've always been sort of working towards. You know, I still play classical music. I write, you know, a variety of music, and it's so back then I was a lot more insecure, so I needed that approval, and that was sort of what it was, you know.
Did you have any moments where you looked at Bob Rock and you're like, man, this is the guy that produced the Black Album from Metallica that sold 32 million albums and is one of the greatest albums of all time and opened the doors for how big metal music got since 1991 going mainstream?
100%. Like basically, so Arnold was a wonderful producer, such a great musician, but he had a different perspective on what guitars should sound like. And I had a vision. Like I was really, really, really into the cult sounds, you know, and I was really into some of the Motley Crue sounds that Bob had gotten, and Metallica, obviously. So to me, like I really pushed hard on getting Bob to make our second record. And my bandmates were like, yeah, Bob Rock's more of a metal guy. Like, you know, we should get one of those you know, punk rock guys to make our second record. I'm like, nope, it's gotta be Bob. It's gotta be Bob. And oddly enough, it's funny because Pierre and Chuck really had a wonderful time with Bob on the second record. They really like sort of embraced his approach, and but I was both nervous because yeah, I was thinking about Bob Rock, who had done, you know, all those Bon Jovi records and Metallica records, and I was just like really, really sort of like, I don't know, insecure around him. And I just wanted to sort of prove my worth as a guitar player, and I was always overdoing things, and I think that's what made it difficult, you know, for us in the studio. I remember there's a moment where I'm playing like sort of a like there's a part in Jump, the song Jump. There's sort of an interlude where I play like sort of a riffy guitar part in the bridge, and I'm like, oh, I could do this again a lot better. Bob's like, oh yeah, okay. So I start. He records. He's like, stop, do it again, stop, do it again, stop, do it again, stop, do it again, and like for like I don't know 2 minutes, and then he's like, you want to listen back to the first take? Listen back to the first take, and I'm like, okay. I know what you're doing right now. Yeah, it was about, you know, the rawness, the energy, and he wanted to sort of like teach me that, you know, there is something special about going for it, balls out, you know, and not overthinking things. Because this band is definitely an overthinking band, that's for sure.
This episode has been brought to you by the Women in the Music Industry podcast. It's hosted by music producer Rob Wells, who has worked with global superstars like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Selena Gomez. Through his 1-hour interviews, he shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in the music industry. Some of his notable guests include Morgan Lander of the multi-million selling metal band Kitty, and Pam Shane, who co-wrote Genie in a Bottle for Christina Aguilera. If you're a fan of the Joel Martin Mastery podcast, you'll love the Women in the Music Industry podcast, which is available on all platforms. So recently on July 6th, 2025, you guys released the documentary Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd. It's available on Prime Video. I've watched it twice. I love it. I think it's great. For you guys, for the band itself, how has the reception been over the last month and a half since its release?
Well, the reception is amazing, like I think people are loving the fact that it's a story about companionship, it's a story about resilience, it's a story about like hard work, and I think people really, really loved it. I think it's a well-made documentary, but I got to tell you, it was really hard to make. It was really, really, really hard. First of all, like we had like a crew following us for the better part of 2024, like a full year. Um, and I don't know, it was pretty invasive. I didn't love it. It sort of showed certain dynamics, amongst ourselves that were sort of like still the same dynamics that were there, when we were teenagers. And we were still sort of like teasing each other, like sort of like bugging, talking to one another without all the respect that I think we all deserve. And that was really like sort of highlighted by all that footage that we saw. So it was very challenging. I did not love the process. I really did not. I was really happy when I started seeing the archives being put together because I think that's probably the best part of the documentary. It's the depth, the richness of all these archives that our friend Pat Langlois, um, you know, sort of like not really with the greatest mastery at first, put together, just out of passion. He became better over the years, but at first it was just like, camera all over,
The
shaky.
basement videos.
Yeah, 100%. But we were filming stuff that became sort of like our story. And nothing like if you talk to the four guys and you ask the four guys, what is the story of Simple Plan? It would not be what you see in the documentary. It would be so different. Each guy has a different perspective. But now you have, I don't even remember half of it, really, to be honest. Like it went so fast, it was so crazy. And we partied a lot too, so that just didn't help. Um, but the archives are sort of telling the story as it was. And I saw some of the footage and I was like, oh shit, that's how it happened. Oh, that happened after this, not before. So the chronology was a bit off in my memory. So I think it's pretty great. The fans are loving it. What I really was hoping for was would it expose the band to a different audience, to an audience that would not necessarily know Simple Plan? And luckily, the platform, the Amazon platform, is doing that. Like um, our shows are growing. We're playing the biggest shows we've ever played in the US. And I'm not saying that in a sort of like braggy way. I'm saying that like it was tough at moments in the US. Like we were on MTV, we were on radio all over, and sometimes we would not sell out, certain venues that were much smaller than what we're playing now. So I love the fact that the plan that we put together before the pandemic, which was like, let's do more opening slots. Let's go back to the grind. Let's tour our asses off. Let's create so much content that, you won't be able to avoid us, and make sure that we invest in our content so it's good content, and we have a team with us that works really hard, who work really hard at creating that content. So all of that. So opening for Avril, doing a co-headlining with Sum 41, opening for The Offspring, touring nonstop. Like we in 2024 we played as many shows as we did in the heydays of 2002, 3, and 4. It's crazy. It's insane, like in your mid 40s to be touring that much. It's just crazy. But it paid off. And here we are, sort of like celebrating 25 years with a documentary, a kick-ass tour. I don't know, man. It feels pretty good. Like it's pretty amazing. It's sort of an anomaly. It doesn't happen that way. Bands don't become bigger after 25 years, but here we are.
So we're going to talk about the current tour that you're on, the upcoming shows. But first, I have some kind words sent in from someone that has been there since the very start. So this is from Chuck Kamo, drummer from Simple Plan. He says, I've known Jeff for more than 30 years since we met in high school. He's been a truly great friend for all these years to me and the rest of the band. He's loyal and always there when you need anything. It's thanks to him that the band even exists. He's the one who had the idea to form a band together, and I'm so grateful he convinced me to give music another chance. I owe him so much for that. There's many things I love and admire about Jeff. His dedication, his work ethic is exceptional. He loves playing guitar more than anyone I know, and he devotes an incredible amount of time and energy to mastering his craft and becoming the best musician he can. His commitment is so inspiring and impressive. He's also extremely dedicated to his family and kids. He cares about them so much and is constantly there for them, so caring, guiding, and helping them even when he's far away on tour. His values, he always strives to do the right thing, to be fair and respectful. His intelligence and ability to have important conversations and to always offer strong arguments and a unique perspective on all the key decisions we have to make together. His business sense and analytical mind has been such an asset for the band. Finally, I admire his willingness to grow, to learn, and do everything he can to be the best person he can be over the past 25 years. He's been an incredible positive force in the band and in my life. He has inspired me to be more grateful and to appreciate what I have more. And that's been a huge lesson for me to learn, and I'm so grateful for that. So that's from your buddy, Chuck.
Holy shit, man. Wow. Between Arnold and Chuck. Holy shit. It it's pretty amazing that I've known Chuck for 30 years and I didn't even know that he thought that of me. I mean, yeah, it's very touching. I mean, my bandmates are very, very incredible people, very talented guys, they all have their strengths and they all have abilities that are very complementary to mine. And I've decided, in this band, I would be a positive force. I would be someone who helps my bandmates sort of navigate, the tensions, the stress, and be sort of a grounding base. So that's a conscious decision that I've made over the years. I wanted, and I don't think that I was the best version of myself in the early days of the band. You know, I was not happy partying as much as we were. And I didn't have like a drinking problem or a drug problem. Like it's not one of those like, Def Leppard, musicography where you see all the excesses and everything. It's not, it didn't go that far, but I lost myself. Like I was not living up to the values that I care about, I was raised by a kind woman. My dad was more of the provider, and my mom was like uh, a modern woman. Well, she had gone to school. She was a teacher. She was kind. She was loving. She taught us, about everything, like really about being a good human, So those are the values I care about. And as I age, oddly enough, that's what I want to go back to. I want more of that. So I bring that to the band, and I'm like, it's funny because now I sort of see myself as the arbitrator, the sort of like the conflict breaker, in the band. And oddly enough, when you see the documentary, I was pretty hot-headed when I was, when I started the band. I mean, I was young, I was just not really mature, and it took a while for me to mature, And I learned a lot from my kids and from my partners in the band as well, Chuck has just doesn't get angry. He's really sort of like grounded and he thinks it through. And there's one thing that Chuck does is he never gives up. He's talking about my work ethic, but his is like he's a robot. He just
In the
you
documentary, it's
see it in the
very
documentary,
apparent.
right?
Yeah.
Which it's interesting that Chuck says all these things about me because there's something that's a bit frustrating in the documentary is the reality is the fact that Chuck works so hard is something that I think that the filmmaker could not avoid, showing. But at the same time, it kind of reduces, the amount of visibility, that the other men members have, and that was a little frustrating because I know that I was there for every single decision that was important, to this band. And it was like we talk things through, it's not just Chuck. But I'm okay with the fact that Chuck was so well represented because obviously, and I mean, he works a lot, but beyond that, he saved that project. People don't necessarily know that, but there was a time where I didn't know if we would have a documentary. I think the filmmaker did not understand the scope of the project. Getting all these archives put together, sort of integrating them with, more recent footage was like quite a big endeavor. And I think it was a lot more than what he had bargained for. And Chuck literally went into the cutting room with him for a month, finished the project with him. That's pretty incredible. So that says a lot about the work ethic. But then you got, Pierre. I think it's showed in the documentary, but Pierre's musical talent is, dude, it's pure insanity. Like we did a song for the documentary called Nothing Changes, and we got in the studio together and we sort of did it the old school way, all together, and we started, like with ideas, we bounced ideas, but the reality is I sort of saw Pierre there and I was like, he really doesn't need me. Like the guy could write a kick-ass song. Like in the course of writing that one song, he he had three or four ideas that could have became wonderful songs on their own, and he just discarded them. Like it just flowed out of him. It was crazy. And I had never seen, well, I had forgotten it. Like we just don't make records enough. We tend to wait 4 or 5 years between records, and then you sort of forget, how talented the guys are. But seeing Pierre be in possession of his craft the way he is now, I think he's gotten to a point where it's like, oh right, man, well, I'm just happy to be here, and help out. I'll arrange the song with you. I'll craft all the guitar parts that you need, but holy shit. So that's not as showcased in a documentary as I would have hoped, to see. But again, it says a different story and it's okay. But I wish we could have made four documentaries, and
Maybe you'll have to make a new one in the future.
not quite yet. We're still traumatized. But I'm saying all these things in a nuanced way. Like I think it's a great documentary. I think it's wonderful. But again, there's always something you could do a bit differently or a bit better, and yeah, the process was definitely very challenging.
So I love the new single, Nothing Changes. I have it on my great songs playlist on Spotify. Maybe I have to rename it to Therapy, like the fan has as well. But I've been playing it a ton. Man, that gets the fan base excited that there's new music. The last album came out about 3 years ago. I have to ask, as a Simple Plan fan, are there plans in the works for a new album or new music? You can tell me it's top secret, but I just
No,
have
no,
to
no, I'll tell you
ask.
for sure. Nothing Changes was sort of therapy for us because we we had like cold feet. We were nervous about getting into the studio again. We just didn't even know that we were functioning enough as a band to get into the studio and make a song quickly enough because we are, man, perfectionists to a point where we get paralysis, and getting to the studio and telling ourselves, allowing ourselves 2 days to finish a song, write, record, and mix a song in 2 days, that was just liberating. It kind of showed us that it can be done. We don't have to spend 6 months making a record and sort of like grinding at it and just, sort of obsessing about every single detail, like just doing it. And so to answer your question, we are going to get in the studio. We're not very good at writing and recording while we're on the road. And to be fair, the schedule is too gruesome anyways to allow that. So we're taking a break after Offspring in Europe. That's probably going to be December. we have until March to make a record, and the plan is to do it that way, you know. So get into the studio and just write as much as we can. So I think it's definitely possible. I think we'll get it done. But yeah, so that's, you know, Nothing Changes was our therapy, you know, as a band. We could do this. We could be efficient in the studio and not obsess about everything.
I have the final quote of the interview. We were talking about being in the studio. This is from someone that knows all about being in the studio. In my opinion, one of the greatest producers on planet Earth. This is from Garth Richardson, Grammy nominated producer, Juno Award winning
Garth.
producer. He, man, he produced Rage Against the Machine's debut album in 1992, which is in my top three albums of all time. It might be my favorite album of all time. And this is what Garth has to say. He says, I wish every band member in every band was like Jeff, a true gentleman in every way, a wonder guitar player. Canada is lucky to have him. So yes, we claim you as our own here in Canada.
I mean, Garth made one of the best sounding records of all times. Like when you put that Rage Against the Machine record, that debut record that he made, and you put it on, like it sounds so big and so aggressive, you know. And to me, like when I met Garth, you know, over the years at all the Junos and all that stuff, I was like, dude, I'm gonna pick your brains, you know. And I did, and Garth was always very generous, and I'm a huge fan. So it was sort of like it was so crazy sitting at a bar with Garth Richardson and having a drink with, you know, one of my idols and just shooting shit, you know, and I still follow his career, and I'm always like amazed. He did some really good records, you know. He keeps on making really great records, but like I don't know. I'm always very surprised that these great people actually paid attention to her career like that. I'm really touched, you know, and yeah, man, it's funny because my son, we're coming back, you know, full circle. My son listens to a lot of rock music, and I told him like Rage Against the Machine is the heaviest band on the planet. Like when you put that record on, like it just, man, you like it's primal. It makes you want to jump around and break shit, you know? And
Those Tom
that's
Morello guitar riffs are just
oh,
bananas.
but everything, the sonic aspect of it is just like bam, bam, bam. So yeah, Garth just produced the shit out of that record, you know, and man, I've been trying to think. There's a British band. I shouldn't say British. They're Scottish, and he produced them. He made some of their best records, and I'm drawing a blank. Do you know who I'm talking about? He did.
Can you name any of the songs or albums or
I'm
band
horrible.
members or
Shit, I can't. This is so bad. I had a bad night's sleep on the bus last night and my brain is dead. But anyways, yeah, it'll come like we'll stop the interview and then I'll be like, shit, that's the name of the band. But
he's done some great albums. There's a Chevelle album, Wonder What's Next, that sounds incredible. And
it sounds
I
incredible.
think that's what he got nominated for. No, the Grammy nom was for the Rage Against the Machine. I think he won the Juno maybe for the sound of that Chevelle album. But yeah, if you look at his discography, it's just like the greatest
Crazy.
albums ever.
And that's what I love. Like to me, I'm really passionate about people like that. Like Garth's his lifestyle is making records. Like he just never stops because he loves it. He's passionate about what he does. My life is dedicated to music. You know, I've everything I do, like I work out so I could play music that I want to play. I want to stay in shape because like I run, I hike, I bike, you know, like I do all these things. I ski in the winter, like I do extreme sports because like I just want to I want to keep doing this for as long as possible, you know? And to do that, especially the Simple Plan shows when you're jumping around and you're running on stage, like you have to be in good shape, you know? So it's all about music. So when I see other people like that, you know, Bob Rock, you see, you know, Garth, um, even my bandmates, you know, they just nonstop. They're always like wanting to improve, and that to me is inspiring.
So I saw Garth just posted pictures. He's in the studio with Kitty, which is exciting. And
Nice.
Yeah. I want to just quickly touch on the charity and the tour that you're on before we wrap up. So, the charity, the Simple Plan Foundation, over the years, you guys have raised and donated around $3 million. In 2012, you guys won your second Juno Award. This time it was for the Alan Waters Humanitarian Award. One thing that really stands out about the band is just how much you care about the fans and how well you treat the fans. I want to share three comments from fans that prove my point. So, James Street says, I met Jeff recently backstage at a pizza party in Brisbane, and he's such a nice guy. That day, he ran a 10K in under an hour along the Brisbane River. Then there's Daryl Jason Hughes that says, I've met the band a few times. They are four of the nicest guys you will ever meet. And then James Redlinger Jr. says, Simple Plan has saved my life countless times. I am blessed to have been able to tell them that when I met them backstage in 2012. So, what makes you guys appreciate your fans and have such a close relationship with them? I want to believe it's because you're good Canadian boys, but what do you think it is?
Um, our fans are our bosses, like it's not the other way around. I would be out of a job if it wasn't for our fans. And and when you've been doing this for as long as I have, you realize that there's ups and downs in your career, right? And the same people that you meet on the way up, you meet a lot faster on the way down. And we've been there, In 2008, guitar music was completely out of fashion. Radio would not play Simple Plan anymore on the radio, and we relied so much on radio to be heard that it was disastrous for us, Our shows would like really not look good, and it was really bad. And then we decided to sort of pivot and try, a different approach, but our fans were always there. The hardcore fan base, the core of it was always present. And I still see faces that I recognize from 20 years ago at our shows. And to me, that makes me really, really, really proud because it means that they stood by us, we stood by them, we respected them. There's a really, a good respect on both sides of things. And I love the fact that, they are the reason why people heard about us through the harder times because they would be the influencers that would talk about Simple Plan and sort of get the word around. And the charity to me is sort of the best approach we found to answer those testimonies that you're talking about that we hear backstage when people tell us I'm really going through a hard time and your music is helping out, but do you have any advice, with that problem that I'm facing, with depression, with, dark thoughts that I have? To be fair, my answer is often I really I want you to find the resources, that will help you. I'm here, to make music to allow you to escape, and to live emotions and sort of have a good time, while you're at the show. But I know people that could help you because the foundation allowed me to be introduced to amazing individuals that actually changed society through their charities. So what we do is we raise like $1 out of every single ticket that we sell, and we basically finance charities that are working on the ground and applying change to society, like making a difference. So it's been so rewarding to meet all these amazing people. Like there are some really, really special people on this planet that are really making a difference, that are changing the world, bettering the world. And yeah, so the foundation it's almost like giving us back more than anything we're giving. So when I win those awards, those humanitarian awards, or I hear, I'm like, it's kind of unfair because I want to kind of pass it on to the amazing people that I meet throughout the year through the foundation.
So you guys are currently on the Bigger Than You Think US headline tour. You're celebrating your 25th anniversary. The tour is from August 9th to September 3rd, 19 cities. Special guests, you have 303, Bowling for Soup, and Lolo. You've done your first 7 shows so far. You have a show tonight in Minneapolis. I have a testimonial from someone that was at a recent show. So this is from Jamie Ellertson. And Jamie says, I just went to a Simple Plan concert with my 9-year-old daughter where she was pulled on stage. Her dad died 3 years ago, and at that time, she became very drawn to Simple Plan and their music to help her cope. I would love to hear what's the most impactful moment you've had in your career. I hope you realize that Simple Plan has been saving lives through music for generations now. So that's from Jamie.
Whoa. Um, yeah, most impactful moment. Um, I don't know, like picking one would sort of reduce the importance of all the moments that I've had, throughout the years with fans that I think, yeah, were sort of like felt that the music really helped them. I mean, I met so many people that are like radiant, that are happy now, and that 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 really claim that they were not at a certain period of their time and of their lives, and that the music helped them a lot, and that to me is just amazing. It's like it's so powerful. Like it's a little overwhelming. I don't always understand it, and as I told you, like sometimes I'm almost like I wonder, like, is it an exaggeration or not, But when I hear those kind of stories, I'm like, maybe not. I know music was like, again, as I said, really important to me. It was like, God, like my teenage years were tough, and music was sort of the my way of escaping, and guitar was sort of like my focus, my meditation, my God, when I was angry, I would crank it up, and it was just like so therapeutic. So I could understand for someone who doesn't necessarily play how listening to music could have a similar effect. So I think it's wonderful. I think we as humans are drawn to people who push their potential to the highest levels. Great painters, great movie makers, great actors, great chefs, great musicians, because we all have a mission to develop ourselves and be the best at what we do. I was listening to your questions. You're so researched. You went deeply into all these, like deep things about our career. You found testimonials of like amazing people in my life as a musician. You have all these fans' questions that you picked, and that to me is someone who worked his ass off to be the best version of themselves, doing an interview. And I salute you. I think it's very rare to go so deeply during a conversation and have such a great interview. So thank you very much. And I think that's what people are drawn to. We are drawn to people who work their asses off and push their potential. That's why we see athletes on TV and we love them, hockey players that do really well. We forget how much ice time they actually put in, how much work they put in, all the workouts, the nutrition and all that stuff. We're just stoked, and we're we are amazed by what they're doing, and humans are like that. So I think in a similar way, I think that people are attracted to what we do because we care, we worked hard, and we try to be the best versions of ourselves.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Yeah, it's called the Mastery Podcast
I
because
know.
interviewing people that have achieved mastery in their field. And yeah, we love human potential and human achievement and greatness, just showing what is truly possible if we have a big dream and a big vision for our lives and we commit every day to becoming the best version of ourselves. And I want to know if our listeners go right now and purchase a ticket to this current tour, or after this tour wraps up, you're off on another tour, September, October, November. If they go and purchase a ticket, what can they expect when they see Simple Plan in concert?
You know what? We decided to go back and sort of like embrace every single aspect of our career. Whether it was, like an appearance on a certain TV show that just became like a classic. We'll touch that. Whether it's like, jumping into the crowd and really going in and having a moment. All the stunts we're pulling every single stunt, and growing the audience allowed us to also bring a bigger, cooler production. So we are expressing ourselves through video content, through like the way the stage is laid out, all these things.
Custom merchandise. I'm seeing really cool
Oh,
merchandise.
for sure. Yeah, we have like merchandise for every single show, unique, merchandise. So we want to be creative in every aspect, of what we do. And it's kind of cool, like, again, 25 years later to be able to do all of that. And by the way, I cheated while you were reading some of the questions. I went back and researched Garth's stuff, but Beefy Clyro is the name of the band that he produced. And some of these records are just pure genius.
I got to check those out. Yeah, the band Biffy Clyro, that was bigger in the UK than here,
Yeah.
I believe, unfortunately. So, is
They're
there a
gods in the UK. They're gods. Like
okay?
I've seen them play like headline festivals in front of 80,000 people, everybody singing the lyrics. They're such a great band.
So I have the final four fan questions. They're really short questions. We can just rapid fire really short answers. So Samantha Bungard asks, did you ever think Simple Plan would make it this far and still be playing all these years later?
No, never. Absolutely not. I'm still pinching myself.
Megan Willett asks, what's your absolute favorite part of touring?
Discovering new places. And now that I run, I see, like sides of these cities that I've always been, in complete different sides, which I love.
Shayna Franzen, what's your favorite song to play live?
Um, I'm just a kid. It gets such a pop. And I didn't know, I wanted to stop playing that song. And I'm glad that, the people have spoken and that we're still playing it because wow, what a reaction that one gets.
Natalie Renke, if you got to pick all the songs on the set list, what songs would you put in that are not normally in there?
I would put all the guitar solos. I would put Promise. I would put what other? Well, you know what? It's funny. The guys are like sort of embracing it now. So there's more guitar stuff than there's ever been. Um, we should play Crazy. We should play Perfect World. We should play um, some of the songs off the third record too are the longer songs. It's a good problem to have. We have a lot of songs that were sort of like that connected with people, so we kind of have to play those. I always tell people when they ask me like, "Why are you not playing Perfect World? Why are you not playing Crazy?" I'm like, "Well, I'll let you decide. We could take Welcome to My Life out. We could take Perfect,
The gift and the
and
curse of having like 20 plus hit songs.
25 years, that's what it does. I want to play 3 hours. Pierre doesn't."
So we've made it to the final three questions here. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I'm most proud of that my kids are not observing sort of a decline or like sort of I think that bands at some point in their career become sort of a lesser version of what they were. And I don't think that's where we are. I hope not. And I'm proud of the fact that I see my kids, watch the shows and they're proud and they're into the music. That makes me really proud.
Do they think their dad is a rock star or just some schmuck at home that takes out the garbage?
Dude, I'm such a schmuck for them. You have no idea. I'm only cool when they're side stage with their friends. They're like, hey, that's my dad. But as soon as I'm back in the kitchen, I'm like, I'm just the cook who cleans up.
If you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could take all the lessons you've learned since 10 years old, all the mentorship and the lessons and the experience and the ups and downs, the successes and failures, if you could boil that down to some advice, what do you whisper to cute little Jeff that's sitting there to help guide him through this human experience?
I would tell him, like, pay less attention to what people think of you and focus on again being the best version of yourself, but learn to how to say no to people. Try to want to please less. It was such a big thing in my life. I was such a person pleaser for the longest time. And I don't know, it's not healthy. I think at some point you just have to decide, I am that person. I will not be, great for everybody. I will not, um, get along with everybody, and that's okay. and trust yourself. It'll go well.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you over the last 25 plus years?
I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for being there for us, for trusting us, even when we released material that was not that great. You stood by us. Um, Thank you for giving us this amazing opportunity to still be playing after 25 years because, without you, we would be nothing. So I do respect you very much, and I'm grateful for you allowing me to live my dreams still after all these years.
So, as we wrap up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a guitarist. I want to commend you for having that big vision for your life, having those big dreams, and actually following through, pursuing that on a daily basis, becoming the best version of yourself. I want to thank you as a fan for putting out great music over the last 25 plus years. It's become the soundtrack to the lives of millions of people around the world, including myself. I want to thank you for treating your fans with so much love and respect and making everyone feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. I want to thank you for all the charity work you guys have done with the band, with the foundation. And last but not least, I want to thank you for sitting down with me for the last hour or so as a fan. I had so many simple plan questions since I was 17 years old. You've answered all of them. So Jeff, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much for doing this. It was great. We should have done it sooner, actually.
Hey man, I'm persistent. We got her done. So that's all I care about is
Good for you.
we actually got this done, and I'm very happy to have sat down with you. So to the Jeff fans, to the Simple Plan fans, to the podcast fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Who would you like me to feature next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know in the comments. You can also send me an email at joelmartinmastery@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on all social media platforms at joelmartinmastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.